The entire classroom went silent the moment the teacher slammed her hand on the desk. "Don't move!" she snapped as all eyes turned toward the back of the room where a black student sat, frozen confusion written all over his face. "You think I didn't notice?" she continued, her voice sharp and accusing. "My wallet was right here. And now it's gone." Whispers spread instantly, students shifting in their seats, creating distance like he was already guilty before anything was proven. "I didn't take anything," he said quietly, his voice barely steady, but it wasn't enough. "Oh, really?" the teacher replied coldly, already pulling out her phone. "Then you won't mind if I call the police?" And she did, right there in front of everyone. The room filled with tension so thick it felt hard to breathe. Some students avoided eye contact, others stared openly, watching like it was some kind of scene instead of a real moment happening to someone sitting just feet away from them. Within minutes, 2 police officers walked into the classroom, their presence heavy, immediate, commanding attention. The teacher rushed toward them, explaining the situation, pointing subtly but clearly toward the student. "That's him," she said. The words landed like a verdict. The boy slowly stood up, his hands trembling slightly, his eyes scanning the room, looking for anyone at all to speak up for him. No one did. "Turn around, son," one officer said, his tone firm but not aggressive. Humiliation burned through him as he followed instructions, every movement watched, every second stretching longer than it should have. The officer checked his pockets, his bag, his desk. Nothing. They found nothing. The silence that followed was different, now uncomfortable, uncertain, but instead of apologizing, the teacher crossed her arms. Clearly frustrated, "He must have hidden it somewhere else," she insisted. The officers exchanged a look. One of them nodded slightly before turning back. "We're going to need you to come with us, just to clear a few things up." The words hit harder than anything before. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore, this was real. As he was led out of the classroom, the whispers started again, quieter this time but sharper. Some students looked guilty, others just curious, a few even relieved it wasn't them. The door closed behind him, and just like that he was gone. The rest of the day felt off for everyone, even if they didn't admit it. The teacher tried to continue the lesson, but the energy in the room had shifted completely. Something didn't feel right. Later that afternoon, the truth came out quietly, without drama, without an announcement. The wallet had been found. It wasn't stolen. It had slipped behind a cabinet near the teacher's desk, but by then the damage was already done. No announcement was made to the class. No apology was given publicly. Just a brief comment before dismissal, a small correction that didn't match the size of the accusation. "He's been cleared," the teacher said quickly, moving on as if nothing had happened. But something had happened and everyone knew it. The next morning, the school felt normal on the surface. Students walking through halls, laughing, talking like any other day, but there was an undercurrent, something unspoken. Then it changed. Black SUVs pulled into the school parking lot. Not one, multiple. Men and women in dark suits stepped out, moving with purpose, not rushing but not casual either. Staff near the entrance froze, unsure what they were seeing. Inside the front office, the atmosphere shifted instantly when the doors opened and they walked in. Credentials flashed briefly but clearly. Federal agents' words spread fast, faster than anything else had. "FBI is here." Students whispered it in hallways. Teachers paused mid-conversation, trying to understand why. Within minutes, the principal was cooled down, his confident posture from earlier replaced with visible tension as he greeted them, forcing a polite smile. "How can we help you?" he asked. "We're here regarding an incident that took place yesterday," one agent replied calmly. The room went quiet. The agents didn't waste time. They asked for records, statements, security footage, names. The tone wasn't aggressive, but it was serious. This wasn't routine. This was an investigation. Upstairs in the classroom, the same students sat in the same seats, but the energy was completely different. Now when the door opened, it wasn't another teacher, it was 2 agents. "Good morning," one of them said calmly. "We'd like to ask a few questions." Eyes widened instantly. Some students sat up straighter, others looked down, avoiding attention. The teacher's confidence from the day before was gone, replaced by visible unease as she tried to maintain composure. "What is this about?" she asked. The agent looked at her directly. "We're here about what happened to that student yesterday." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. One by one, students were asked to speak, what they saw, what they heard, what was said. Details that seemed small at the time now carried weight. Some hesitated, some told the truth, and slowly a clearer picture began to form. Not just about the accusation, but about Patton's comments, behavior, things that had gone unnoticed or ignored until now. Downstairs, the principal's office was no longer a place of control. It was a place of questions, answers, documents, everything being reviewed carefully, thoroughly. The truth was expanding beyond a single moment. And then it was revealed. The student they had accused, humiliated, and taken away. It wasn't just any student. His father was a federal investigator. And he had seen the footage, every second of it, the accusation, the call, the way his son was treated. And he didn't react with anger, he responded with action. Back in the classroom, the teacher sat still, her earlier certainty completely gone as reality set in. This wasn't something that could be brushed aside or minimized anymore. This had consequences. Real ones. By the end of the day, the school felt completely different. Conversations were quieter, movements, slower, eyes more aware of everything happening around them. Students who had stayed silent the day before now replayed the moment in their minds, wishing they had said something, anything, because now they understood. Silence had weight. The student returned the following day, walking through the same hallway into the same classroom, but everything had changed. People looked at him differently, not with suspicion, but with something closer to respect mixed with guilt. No one whispered this time. No one moved away. The teacher stood at the front of the room, visibly nervous as he entered for a moment. It seemed like she might say something, but the words didn't come easily. Finally, she spoke quietly. "I owe you an apology." The room went still. "I was wrong," she admitted, her voice unsteady, "and I'm sorry for what happened. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it mattered." He nodded slightly, not saying much, not needing to. Because some things couldn't be undone, but they could be acknowledged. And sometimes that was where change started. Outside the classroom, the investigation continued. Policies, reviewed, training, updated, conversations happening that had been ignored for too long. And across the school, one lesson became impossible to ignore: judgment made in seconds can leave consequences that last far longer. The apology in the classroom didn't end the story. It only exposed how deep it really went. By the end of that week, more students started speaking up, quietly at first, then with more confidence. Things they had ignored before suddenly felt important moments, where certain students were watched more closely, questioned more quickly, disciplined more harshly. Patterns that didn't seem obvious before now stood out clearly. One student mentioned how he had been searched twice in a month for things that were never found. Another admitted he had stopped participating in class altogether just to avoid attention. A girl in the back shared how she had seen the teacher assume things without proof more than once, but never said anything. And now, they were all remembering. The agents returned again, not in a rush but with purpose, each visit adding more pieces to something bigger than a single incident. Files were built, statements, recorded, timelines, reviewed carefully, the kind of attention that doesn't fade away after a few days. The school administration tried to maintain control, sending out emails about fairness and unity, but it felt different now, less like reassurance and more like reaction. Parents got involved, meetings were requested, questions were asked. So not just about what happened, but about what had been happening. At home, the student sat quietly at the dinner table, his father across from him, not in uniform, not as an agent, but as a parent. "You okay?" his father asked calmly. He nodded slightly, but it wasn't a full answer. "I didn't do anything." And still, he stopped mid-sentence, unable to finish. His father understood without needing the rest. "Sometimes the hardest part isn't what happens," he said quietly, "it's knowing why it happened." The room fell silent for a moment. "But what matters now," his father continued, "is what you do with it." Back at school, the teacher's situation was changing quickly. She was no longer leading the class confidently, her movements more cautious, her tone more controlled, as if every word carried weight now because it did. Other teachers noticed it too. Some supported her quietly, others kept their distance, unsure of how things would unfold. Then one morning the announcement came short, direct. She had been placed on administrative leave pending further review. The classroom reacted in silence again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was understanding. The substitute who replaced her didn't mention what happened, didn't need to. The atmosphere already carried the story in every corner, but the impact went beyond one classroom. Training sessions were introduced, staff meetings, extended policies rewritten. Not just words on paper, but actual changes in how situations were handled, how accusations were made, how students were treated. For the first time, many realized how easily authority could shape a narrative before facts ever had a chance. The student returned to a routine slowly, but things weren't exactly the same. People treated him differently now, more careful, more respectful, but also more aware of him, in a way he never asked for. One afternoon, a classmate approached him hesitantly. "I should have said something that day," he admitted, looking down. The student paused for a moment before responding. "You weren't the only one who stayed quiet. It wasn't anger, just truth." And somehow that made it heavier. Weeks passed, and the investigation reached its conclusion, quietly but firmly. The findings confirmed what many had started to see: there had been bias, not just in that moment, but in repeated behavior patterns that influenced decisions without evidence. The school released an official statement, acknowledging the failure and outlining steps for accountability. But for those who experienced it, the statement felt smaller than the impact. Still, it was something, and sometimes something is where change begins. The teacher never returned to that classroom. And while some felt sympathy, many understood that actions carry consequences, especially when they affect others so deeply. As for the student, he didn't become louder, didn't try to prove anything. He just kept showing up, doing his work, moving forward. But the difference now was clear. People listened, not because they were told to, but because they understood what happens when they don't. And across the school, one moment continued to echo in quiet conversations, in changed behavior, in the way people paused just a second longer before making assumptions, because they had seen it happen in real time. How quickly judgment can turn into damage, and how powerful truth becomes when it's finally given a chance to be heard.